Okay, so I'm going to get started. Hello, I'm Chase Bethea. I am a multi-award winning video game composer. Been working in industry for 5,110 days. That is like 14 years. So it's my 14th year anniversary this month. And so you might know my work from Aground or the Thing Remastered trailer music, or also the music from Gex Trilogy trailer by Limited Run Games. I've also been featured in the National Association of Music Museum at MIDI at 40 exhibit, so I've actually been in a museum before, which is kind of cool. I've also done the Global Game Jam 2022 keynote. So that's a bit about me. I've been in a couple of publications as well, Recording Magazine and Game Boy Studio and ROM Magazine and things like that too. So I'm going to talk today about an upcoming book that I'm publishing called Navigating a Decade in the Video Game Industry. It's kind of a working title. And so this is going to be going over some chapters that I've mostly written and giving an insight in terms of what that is like to kind of work in the industry since I've been doing it for so long. The first thing I want to talk about is the truth about networking. So since cell phones landed in the consumer's hands, and even more so in the social media era, we have technology that should make it easier to communicate with one another. We no longer have to write letters and wait, although receiving one of those nowadays is a treat and a joy. But if we are too busy and lazy and insouciant to send a direct/private message or to text to say, "Hi, I thought of you today," then there's a serious problem, I think. And reaching out because you need something versus reaching out to say hi, we're so caught up in our own lives that we barely have time to text, let alone call one another, when in reality, you're probably the one absorbing social media but not actually socializing. Playing video games or binge watching Netflix, but guess what? You probably can have a text conversation and do one, if not two, of the other activities too. A lot of people are confused about networking when they should be working on themselves to strengthen how they would or would want to be treated. So here's why. An aspect of networking means communicating, and that communication needs to be a recipient. It's not one-sided. If you're always the one reaching out, it's not a good communication line, and the chances are that the networking link is dead. Friendships cut both ways. The doorknob opens on both sides, and a cell phone sends as well as receives. You can try to hold on to the network, but the network does not work if it's not nurtured. So assuming people are busy is a cop-out, in my opinion. Sometimes people need to hear from you, but yet again, it cannot always be them reaching out. If you look at your last call or a text from the person and it's been them initiating, then it's probably a flag on the play, on your character. This is a problem, and we need to stop giving, quote, extra saved lives is something I call it, or also known as passes to people who do it. Because in my opinion, it's unacceptable. Relationships take effort. If you are upfront and say, "Hey, I wanted to connect with you. However, I do not have the capacity to keep up, but I will keep you in mind and do my best to reach out when I can," and they do it, then this is a decent person to keep part of your network, I think. Because I'll share a nugget with you. Those that reach out to you first and are consistent are most likely the ones that are in your corner. They are genuine. You do not sense that they have the, quote, ask that is coming. I know very few people that I can count on one hand that have done this with me over the time of my career, as I have been working in this field over the years. Those folks are there. It's effortless and truthful, and that's what genuine communication is. And this is one of the pillars that builds a strong network. So now that we've covered a bit about the general overview of like networking, because it was such a taboo word when people think, it's really about something that we've all done in our life. My definition of networking is making quality friends. Okay, but how do you make quality friendships, you may ask? What I've come to understand is that everyone's mentality of friendships are different, and there are levels to it. I will share with you what I deem to be good friendships. These are the things that I carry throughout my life. Respect, consistency, and reciprocity. If you meet someone in the industry and you want to be friends with them, it should not be because of what they can do for you. It should be with some opinion that you think they are fun, cool, and exciting. You genuinely like them, and they happen to have a cool title or field they work that interests you. So, if you reach out to your new friend and you want to talk or hang out, and you're always the one reaching out, there is no reciprocity there. The reciprocity and consistency is on your side, but not on theirs. So, at that point, you should decide where the friendship lies. Do you cut ties completely, or just have that friend as someone you talk to intermittently? The other key here is not to take it personally. This is hard. When you take it personally in the career, it's going to affect your mental state. Everyone's got something going on in their life at any given time, at every given moment of the day. And you don't know what's going on in their life. And especially if you're a new friend, they may not open up to you like that right away. On the other hand, if this friend is cool and reciprocates, but is someone that asks a lot of you, you need to determine what the limitations of the friendship you have with this friend is. These are just a few things I do not hear being spoken about that are deeper steps of friends in your network, which is the overarch of what I deem to be networking. You have to acknowledge that you enjoy at some level the other person's company and conversation, and this is imperative. This is not transactional. If the energy between you two has tension, then imagine how it will be when you have to work together on a project. How the both of you communicate between each other will determine if the collaboration is copacetic or not, especially when there are milestones and deadlines. Just because that game looks amazing and you could possibly become popular does not always mean it's worth putting each other through angst and hardship. The game did not make itself appealing. The people behind it did. And we lose sight of that often when we're wrapped up in this whole thing called video games. Therefore, early on, try to determine two things. Number one, does this person treat and speak to me how I wish to be treated? Number two, am I treating or speaking to them how they would like to be treated? And the insider for number three is, am I speaking and treating myself the way I would wish to be treated? From there, both parties should be able to discern if this is a proper friendship or not. This may take a couple of interactions to reach the conclusion. In the long run, the benefits will be positive. You will either gain a friend that you could end up working with, or you could be saving each other time and energy and creating space for the proper person to fill the place of the former. In the beginnings of my career, I wanted to become an assistant of a AAA video game composer. A colleague from Lens Crafters had shared that there was a composer signing happening. I recall hearing that composer of God of War, the PS2, PSP, and Jim Dooley, who wrote music for the game Infamous on PS4, as well as Chris Velasco, were there at the signing. Chris ended up not attending that signing. I was under the impression that Chris was the main composer for God of War, but by not doing my homework properly, I discovered it was someone else. And thankfully, I did not make an ass of myself, and I still respected and asked educated questions. I inquired if any of them needed a composer assistant. The composer of God of War replied that he did. I did my due diligence and sent several follow-up emails. I sent these emails for a year until one day he responded. I still remember the excitement of the response. It goes a little bit something like, hey, it's glad that you reached out. I've been very busy, but I want to keep in touch. Let's link up with some time the next following weekend and let me know what your schedule is like. I was invited over to his house. There would be times to discuss the expectations, and he even mentions in the email getting to know each other better. I showed up with donuts because I was raised to not show up without anything if you're invited to someone's house for the first time. But unbeknownst to me, he was on a diet, a strict diet. As I walked in the kitchen, I saw grass on the counter, the kind that you see in Jamba Juice, and applying that this was the healthy focus that he was on. And I was quite embarrassed, but he assured me the donuts would not go to waste. They would go to his children. You have no idea how relieved I was to hear that. As the day went on, I learned so much. The studio that he showed me was incredible. He shared his tips, his tricks, and development stories and workflows for The Amazing Spider-Man. I even have the exclusive CD that no one has. He also shared how long it took to mix the soundtrack and how he got the job with the development company. Unfortunately, my work schedule at LensCrafters clashed when he needed me to work. My boss was already on my tail about scheduling, and I would either have to quit or become the assistant for a month, or work 2 days, or get another job after, or do both. The composer spared me, and I did not do both, but I was pretty depressed that day. I actually remember it very clearly. I went home and I watched the full season of Heroes in one day. I talked to my girlfriend at the time, and at that moment I knew it was not going to work out with us. Something told me this is the life of a video game composer, and major sacrifices are going to have to be made, like quitting a job, not eating full meals, and stepping away from relationships if I wanted to become one of the greats. What came from that was not being his assistant, but his friend. Many months later, one day on Facebook, he made a post asking if anyone could help him move. This was the best thing I could have done. That day, I met my future mentors, Ken Jacobson, Kyle Johnson. In addition, I built trust and reliability. I showed up in a way that meant something big for him in his life at the time. And my actions were genuine. Yes, I would have loved to be an assistant, but the friendship in the meeting Kyle and Ken had was the better deal. I've known the four of them for over a decade now. They all believe in my work, respect me as a person, and one of the most talented composers in the industry. And it's a huge honor that they see me as that. Some years later, one day, the composer and I were having drinks at his favorite karaoke spot. He told me, "Chase, if you are a really good guy and great things are going to happen to you." I'm doing an impression of him, so he probably won't mind me cracking on right now. It brought me to tears that I held back from in front of him at the time when he said that to me. To know how hard our, quote, ship started from dark delicacies in Los Angeles to hanging out as friends, having a good time, and for him to say that to me, it solidified that I made the better decision of not being the assistant. It showed me there is always another path, typical to kind of how we play our games. You're going to side quest sometimes, and then you're going to be on the main quest. I want to say thank you, Gerard. Kyle Johnson is one of the most generous people you'll meet in games. He's also a genius. His work on Burnout, Guitar Hero, Call of Duty, and more is masterful. I recall going to his house for the first time in Game Audio Hour meetup. He was completely hospitable. When he saw me again, he said, "I see the work you're doing, and it's really great." He proceeded to give me a grand tour of his house and studio. He did not have to say that. He was a very successful AAA composer, sound designer, audio director, programmer, extraordinaire. But I could tell he genuinely believed in my work and in me. Over the years, he imparted so much knowledge when he would invite me to his house, and was magnanimous in subcontracting me on a couple of gigs. He also started the Game Audio Hour podcast and later on brought me as a panelist. Kyle was so generous in mastering some of my video game soundtracks and helping me fast track to upgrade my studio, as well as looking out for me when I was in hard times. To this day, Kyle continues to champion my work, and even though I'm grateful for the support, I am most thankful for the many years of our friendship. After helping Gerard, I saw Ken again at what I call, quote, the last Game Audio Network Guild build-up, barbecue, in Los Angeles. I literally don't know the other one that existed after 2014 or 2015, so that's why I put that in quotes. I recall sitting at one of the long patio tables at Enon Zura's house and having a casual conversation with peers at other AAA composers. Ken then asked me 2 questions. Number 1, have you worked in Cubase before? Number 2, have you been a composer assistant before? Both answers were yes. The next thing that surprised me was him saying, okay, give me a call next week. What just happened? What did I do? It turned out that Ken wanted to take me under his wing and be his next intern/assistant. I learned invaluable information that I will mention parts later on. A short list would include expression maps from digital audio workstations, deeper knowledge of Steinberg/Cubase/Innuendo, which is the workstation that I use to write music, complex studio setups, the realism of the industry, customer relation management, or CRM, and more. Ken helped me with my mixes and even mastered a couple of my video game soundtracks. He's brilliant, kind, and a master composer and musician. I haven't told this story to many people, but here's an exclusive. Some years ago, I was working at Sam Ash, and a colleague and I were conversing, and a man came around the corner and said out loud, "Do you mind if I get some help, please?" I looked at my colleague to see if he was talking to me. Then I asked the man that he was, and he pointed to me. As I proceeded to help and advise the man to find some monitors for his son, the man asked if I knew how to mix, and if so, how much I charged for mixing. I told him the price, and the man said that was fair. As I tendered the studio monitors, the customer typically had an account with the Sam Ash system. Rest in peace, Sam Ash, by the way. It was a great music store. I could not deny that the last time which appeared was, I couldn't deny that the last name that had appeared in the system was startling. I asked the man if he was related to Jazz as the legend, and he said, "I wish." And I smiled. He smiled and laughed, and I bid him a good day and my contact information as he requested to inquire about future collaborations for mixing gigs. Much curiosity descended me. As soon as I was on my break, I researched who he was. Lo and behold, he was related to the jazz legend. I recall the feeling of a random moment that occurred in being close to greatness. Nonetheless, I kept it cool. However, the thought of meeting him never left my mind. 2 weeks later, on a specific work shift, I wondered if the man would return. And on the same day that I had that thought, the man did return to the store. He needed some more studio gear for his son, and I assisted him. With that, the man exclaimed he was ready to get started on the mixing process. He reached out the following week, and I began working with him. The first time, we collaborated, and he complimented me numerous times on the work that I did on his music. He listed it countless times. I remained humbled and thanked him for the opportunity. Over the course of many months, working closely with him as a life-changing experience to behold. I loved his work because it reminded me of mine. His sound is eclectic, orthodox, energetic, and tantalizing. We discovered we were close and creative souls, and through the musical bond of our friendship, something like that formed. I had earned his trust, but he had also earned mine. I never asked him to list my work until one day he did. And he listened. And when he heard it, he was very impressed. He said to me, "The way you write is incredible. You're already at that level. The world has not listened yet, but they will." It's an honor to say that I helped one of the jazz legends' son mix his album, and will continue to for his next one as well. I want to talk briefly about career relationships versus personal relationships. Some people have on and off relationships, and some people have long-term relationships. In relation to a career, for freelancers or employees of a company, that come on and off could occur, and tenure for employees, returning clients, and freelance work. These are the four main points that cross over seamlessly between each, quote, ship, or career relationships and personal relationships. They are personality, actions, willpower, and accusations. Personality is your character. Habits, thoughts, and every person is unique with these traits. These qualities create attractions for the other person. Some have charisma that lands them a job or gig just as much as it lands them a new date. Actions determine if your ship will endure or end short. And some actions become habits that can result in promotions, contract terminations, new additions to the family, or tensions between siblings. Willpower is the most important thing. It covers the areas like trust, patience, and special vibes that will guide you through these ships. Willpower determines how strong you are inside. With personality and willpower combined, it will go with either to do things or that are good or bad in a ship. A couple examples that could be considered bad things are cheating, withholding some imperative information from your significant other or business partner. A couple examples that could be considered good things are listening and showing undivided attention when needed, career or personal. Showing up when committed, you gave your word and you would. Accusations can and will kill any ship. If all the facts are not there, there's no reason to blame, shame, or pass any judgment. It's the instant penultimate kill. Once this occurs, trust will instantly dissipate and you will almost be impossible to rebuild. If an employer, client, or a significant other or family member, it would be in your right to leave or never return if they did that to you. Some people do not appreciate a good person until they are gone. And usually by that time that they do, it's too late. They'll always regret it. I discovered in my 9th year of my career that a lot of these exchanges are closely related to personal relationships, and there are some parallels. When you're interested in someone or they're interested in you typically, the next step is for you both to maybe go on a date. Why and how did that happen? Why would they go on a date with me, you may ask? To some degree, they trust you. Think about the development terms or companies. Why would they hire you? To some extent, they trust you. The takeaway from all this and these anecdotes are examples is that there was trust. Trust in being a person of my word, trust that I would show up every time, and trust that I would deliver. People have to trust you at some level and at some capacity. The very experienced ones can read your energy quickly and sense this. Trust comes first. It cannot be faked. It is the mindset of only making friends. It is the resilience of integrity towards someone that you choose to interact with. Friendship comes after, and that takes time, and over the duration, more trust is built, which presents opportunity. This is my mindset mostly about the true value of networking versus what we have perceived networking to be, and then mostly like my breakdown about it. Does anyone have any questions thus far about in terms of that? Because it's a big part of the industry in terms of how we navigate. I'm just curious. No? Okay. The other thing I'm going to probably discuss is something that I hear way too much in the industry, and that is imposter syndrome. I personally don't believe in it. Imposter, the definition of that is alluding to something that is deceived by someone that is not showing what it is. And the syndrome is the repeated process of what that can be that's kind of a psychological format for you. So when someone says that they do something as a profession, I'm going to use myself as an example. I write music for video games. But if you never heard my work for video games and you see me working at Burger King flipping burgers, then I'm an imposter. Would you agree? That's why we should knock it off. If as long as you're doing what you say you're doing, you don't have imposter syndrome. You have a lack of knowledge and experience of what you are doing competently. And that is the difference. So as I'm writing this book, I'm breaking that down. I think it's imperative. We seem to kind of do these catchphrases in the industry. Like, I have imposter syndrome. I have imposter syndrome. You don't have imposter syndrome. You should probably take the time to research better what you are lacking in knowledge, get better at it, and continue to practice it so that you can feel confident about what you're doing. Just say you have self-doubt. If we're using the right words, it'll unlock the things that cause us anxiety and stress to not be stuck in these loops about using catchphrases that aren't true. Because what will happen is it will break down your mental state, and you will start to believe you are an imposter, and you won't create anything. But if you can work past those things, then you'll be able to unlock the mindsets within your own creative path and curiosity and put forth the best thing that you can. That's my summary of imposter syndrome. Jill, like I said, I would recommend stop saying it, stop thinking it, and just get better. Say yourself, I have self-doubt. I'm not an imposter. I'm not flipping burgers at Burger King. I'm not doing wall paintings. And because when I say I'm doing and presenting this art, then I presented it. And if you're doing it consistently, then again, you're not an imposter. But if you are an imposter, shame on you. Don't be an imposter. Just be great with what you got to do. Any questions about imposter syndrome that I can help people work over? No? Okay. Networking, the imposter syndrome. I've got a couple other notes here and one more thing I'm thinking about sharing from the book. Maybe I can get some feedback. So, let's go. Let's try this one. I wonder if... So, there's a chapter that's in the book. It's called Isms, Not Advice. Do it because you love it. I heard this from my father many times. I think the first time I heard him say it was in 2008. It was early in my career, in my mid-20s. I was at a part-time job with my cousin. He was describing some of the colleagues that were in the police academy that also did music. One person on the police force was trying his darnest to become a full-time musician. He envisioned himself doing music full-time once he was discovered. However, this did not happen. Alternatively, there were other police officers that still did music in their free time while they were still performing. According to my father, they were not concerned with, quote, being discovered. They just wanted to play and have any opportunity they could while keeping a job that they had. Doing it because you love it is something that most of us typically hear, but it eliminates the stress of feeling like it's work and the pressure to make it something sustainable rather than having a healthy lifestyle. And the reason for him telling me that he was hearing my passion about starting my career as a game composer, and I'm very thankful that he did. He told me that I had the right mindset, that I should continue my focus, and he exclaimed that many people get caught up in the, quote, fame illusion. This means that they want to do something because they believe it will make them famous, and that's what trips people up. Do it because you love it, and if something else comes out of it, then that's icing on the cake, he said. To this day, I believe in this mantra, and it's been practiced in my everyday routine. When I get booked for interviews or I discuss my work that you hear, the passion is in my voice. I love this field a lot. I do it because I love it. And sometimes love hurts too, like if the Chiefs lose. Because if it does not, love doesn't always reciprocate. However, I fully understand that this comes with the territory. I suppose my love may be unconditional in this form. I've already given so much. Fame is not a focus, and I'm focused on doing great work for generations to be that impacted and those that have enjoyed it. So if you get offered anything else, that's a bonus. You don't need anyone to tell you how good of an engineer, composer, writer, designer, cake maker, or anything that you desire to be that you are. Your skills, your talent, and your art speaks for itself. One more chapter to share with you all. And I think I'm going to choose maybe this one. Navigating emotional intelligence. I believe the key tactic to navigating emotional intelligence is building an environment that understands the interpersonal skills that are needed in order to be successful in this industry. This includes traversing and paving the paths where you may or may not be acknowledged and accepted in order to stand strong and radiate in your purpose. I learned quickly at a young age that I have interpersonal skills and to, quote, be good in the room, although I had a few mentors that showed me how, such as my mom, Ken Jakobson, that I mentioned before, Gerard Marino, Kyle Janssen. I still had to polish these skills daily. I had to learn, I had to practice, I had to remind, repeat, and replay these skills. I had to glean from the knowledge that was passed to me that worked and apply it to my personality and experiment in those meet and greet events. When I was at Game Dev Drink Up in LA, I used to put this pressure on myself that I had to meet at least 5 people. That's a lot if you're an ambivert like me. And if you're an introvert, it's really, really hard. You have a better chance beating Dark Souls probably in a month. I felt that I was trying to connect with people to get work for people that would like me, because I was told that people want to work with those that people like. That's what I was told. Most people want to work with their friends. I was told that too. But we talked earlier about what true networking means and the quality of friendships and how that's actually nurtured and formed. I felt I was trying to connect with those type of people, and after attending and trying so many times, I had discovered that that approach I was taking was not effective. I did not feel like I was making quality connections, so I changed my goal to meet one person at these events. Just one. Just one. The goal adjustment was a lot more attainable. If I ended up having quality connection that led to work, then that would be the icing on the cake. This relieved a lot of stress and burden for me, as it resulted in enjoying future drink-up events from there forward. I was even able to help a friend who was an introvert navigate the event easier. By adjusting and lessening my expectations, I assisted in helping my friend have conversations with people they didn't know. My support provided comfort and made it painless for them to navigate the social atmosphere. Emotional cognizance and intelligence is a constant stat practice. I will say that again. Emotional cognizance and intelligence is a constant stat practice. My mom taught me how to do this. I recall being at an award ceremony in an auditorium. My mom was receiving an award that night as Best Actress in a play. She told me, "Look around you, Chase. Do you see anyone that looks like us?" "No," I replied. "You belong here. Get comfortable." she said. Her words were so profound that I never forgot it. So when I decided to enter the game industry, I recalled what she said, knowing that I was the minority. In addition to acknowledging I would be the prime example of a minority that knew that they belonged and brought high value to the table. However, in this odyssey, I have identified that's not enough. You need more. Practice makes perfect, so when perfect is practiced, then perfection is flawless. I wrote that. This is something that I wrote many years ago, and I thought and through some cogitation, I recognized something more that was axiomatic. There's a difference between practicing and being conditioned. You can either decide to practice or not. Even when you're practicing, you're being conditioned to the process of the action that you're doing. Therefore, you're either conditioning yourself to practice the action or not practice the action. If you've ever played Final Fantasy X, raise your hands. Final Fantasy X, cool. Yeah, me too, one of my favorites. You may recall the Thunder Plains area. If you want to obtain a special weapon for Lulu, a character in your party, you'll have to dodge 200 lightning strikes. Let us pretend these lightning strikes occur in your video game career. So, you practice dodging the 200 lightning strikes 200 times, and your reward is your mind being conditioned to now being perspicacious about seeing the lightning betide and being able to dodge it. The chances of lightning hitting you now will slow you down, or worse, crippling you. It will be very slim. Without the choice of choosing to practice to learn how to dodge, you would not be conditioned to become better at that action. If you choose the action to not learn how to dodge, you could be possibly conditioning yourself to be struck by lightning more, which will cause multiple setbacks. Ultimately, the choice weapon of practice is yours to decide. I believe it is best to balance your stat traits accordingly so that you can show up as your best self on a daily basis to provide higher value to yourself and to others. That's all I have to share for the book for now. But I'll take any questions that you may have in terms of navigating anything else in the industry. The book, again, is called Navigating a Decade in the Video Game Industry. It will be published this year. And again, I'm Chase Bethea. Thank you so much.